Imagine a tiny island covered in snow, ice and rock. No trees, no people, just a small piece of land floating in the icy Arctic waters. Hardly the setting for an epic saga, right? But what if I told you that this barren island was the stage for one of the most unique and good-natured conflicts in history? Yes, we're talking about the Whisky War between Canada and Denmark, a dispute that lasted for nearly half a century over a desolate piece of land known as Hans Island. The origins of Hans Island. Hans Island, a mere 1.3 square kilometers in size, is located in the center of the Kennedy Channel of the Nares Strait, halfway between Greenland and the Canadian Arctic. It seems almost laughable that such a small, uninhabited island could be the subject of a prolonged territorial dispute. Yet this tiny island, known as Tartupaluk in Greenlandic, has a history as intriguing as the Arctic itself. Early sovereignty and legal limbo. Picture this. It's the 1930s. And the international community is trying to settle various territorial claims around the world. Hans Island's sovereignty was actually decided by the Permanent Court of International Justice, which recognized Danish ownership. However, the dissolution of the League of Nations, the PCIJ's parent organization, left this ruling in a sort of legal limbo. So for decades, Hans Island drifted back into obscurity as the world faced more pressing concerns like World War II. The beginning of the Whisky War. Fast forward to 1973. Canada and Denmark agreed on maritime borders in the Arctic, but Hans Island somehow slipped through the cracks. It wasn't long before the Whisky War began in 1984. Imagine Canadian soldiers setting foot on Hans Island, planting their national flag and leaving behind a bottle of Canadian whiskey. Shortly after, the Danish Minister of Greenland Affairs arrives, hoists the Danish flag, leaves a bottle of schnapps and a note that reads, "Welcome to the Danish island." And just like that, a friendly boozy battle was born. The quirky tradition of alcohol exchanges. The exchange of alcoholic beverages became a quirky tradition, a symbolic yet humorous standoff that persisted for years. Think about it. An entire war fought with flags and bottles of spirits, rather than bullets and bombs. How often do you hear about international disputes being so cordial? It's almost like a scene from a comedy, rather than a page from the history books. Strategic location and national pride. By now you might be wondering, why did this seemingly trivial dispute continue for so long? Why did two friendly nations, both founding members of NATO, persist in this light-hearted confrontation over an uninhabited island? Well, part of the reason lies in the strategic location of Hans Island. Positioned in the narrow Nares Strait, which separates Canada and Greenland, the island falls within both nations' 12-mile territorial waters according to international law. This proximity made it a point of contention and a subject of national pride for both countries. Renewed attention and formal complaints. Despite the playful nature of the Whisky War, the issue remained unresolved for decades. It wasn't until 2005 that a significant step was taken towards resolution. On July 13th of that year, Canadian soldiers visited the island again, erecting an Inuksuk, a traditional Inuit stone marker, and the Canadian flag. Canadian Defence Minister Bill Graham even made an unannounced visit, which led to a formal complaint from Denmark. This visit brought renewed attention to the dispute and set the stage for future negotiations. The 2022 agreement. In 2018, Canada and Denmark established a joint task force to address the boundary issues once and for all. Finally, on June 14, 2022, a historic agreement was reached. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly, Danish Foreign Minister Jeppe Kofod, and Greenland's Prime Minister Mute Borup Egede signed an agreement dividing Hans Island between the two nations. The island was split along a natural ridge, granting 60% to Greenland under Danish sovereignty and 40% to Canada. This agreement not only ended the territorial dispute, but also created the world's longest maritime boundary, stretching 3,962 kilometers. Implications for Inuit populations. The implications of this agreement were significant, not just for Canada and Denmark, but also for the Inuit populations, who have historically used Hans Island for hunting. Before the agreement was finalized, extensive consultations with the Inuit communities ensured that their traditional rights and access to the island were preserved. This aspect of the resolution highlights the importance of respecting indigenous rights and maintaining their cultural heritage, even in the midst of international diplomacy. Celebrating the end of the Whisky War. The 2022 agreement was celebrated with, you guessed it, another symbolic exchange of liquor. It's almost poetic that a dispute named the Whisky War would end with a toast to peace and cooperation. This resolution is a testament to the possibility of resolving territorial disputes amicably, even in a world often marred by conflict and aggression. It sends a clear message: diplomacy, dialogue, and a bit of humour can go a long way in settling even the most prolonged disputes. A pivotal moment. October 5th, 2023 marked a pivotal moment in the long-standing tale of Hans Island. As the leaves turned and autumn settled in, a Danish proposal to ratify the treaty was put forth in the Folketing, Denmark's parliament. It was a symbolic gesture, an olive branch extended in the spirit of unity and closure. The anticipation built up like the first frost on an Arctic morning, culminating on December 19, 2023, when the Danish parliament officially approved the proposal. It was a historic decision, akin to a final chapter being penned in a storybook. A toast to peace and cooperation. Hans Island may be small and barren, but its story is anything but dull. It serves as a reminder that even the smallest pieces of land can carry significant historical and cultural weight. The Whisky War between Canada and Denmark is a unique chapter in the annals of international relations, one that we can all learn from and perhaps even raise a glass to. So, what do you think? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more fascinating tales from around the world, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Cheers to peace, cooperation, and a good story. And remember, whether it's a tiny island in the Arctic or a major international conflict, sometimes the best way to resolve our differences is with a little kindness and a shared drink.